Once again, this is Sherrod on our P1A visa petition series. And right now we're going to get into a tough one. This one is events that require the participation of internationally recognized athletes. While the P1A eligibility portion, just proving that you are an internationally recognized athlete, is much more straightforward than proving that you're an extraordinary ability foreign national under the O1. This can be very tricky to show that you're coming to participate in events that require the participation of internationally recognized athletes. A couple reasons. Number one is the events that you're coming to compete in have to be proven to require internationally recognized athletes, which is something that nobody really knows what that means, because you can get athletes like from anywhere. Like, how do you tangibly show that my particular organization needs internationally recognized athletes? We'll get into how you go about proving that according to their standards of what they say they want to see. But just in theory out there, it's kind of a weird way to ask if something's important. The other problem that comes up is the athlete actually going to compete in those events? For example, an athlete is a basketball player and they want to come play in the NBA, which of course is relatively easily to show that it requires internationally recognized athletes. It's shown on the biggest broadcast companies in the world. It has the best athletes in the world there. And the winning team is considered the world champion, best professional basketball team in the world. But what if you're currently not signed to an NBA team? That's where it gets hard proving more likely than not that the athlete's actually going to come and play in the NBA. And that's why previously when we discussed those structures, such as U.S. agent for foreign employer and U.S. agent functioning as the employer, that you don't need to show a contractual relationship with those events that you say that you're going to compete in, but you still nonetheless need to prove more likely than not that the athlete is coming to participate in those events. We're getting ready to get into litigation, and we've already successfully appealed cases in combat sports where we're saying the athlete's coming to compete in various promotions, but he doesn't currently have a contract directly with those promotions. Our argument is the regulations don't require to have a contract, then you can show that they're likely to compete in those events other ways. And I'll actually show you what we're doing in that. And then also, if the petitioner is regularly in the business of putting athletes in those circumstances, directing and navigating their careers to compete in fighting, compete in basketball, compete in rodeo, that is tangible evidence right there that more likely than not, those athletes actually will be doing those activities. And, there's always the tool of USCIS. If they see that somebody is not competing, they can send a notice of intent to revoke the visa if they can't find evidence that the athlete is actually competing in those events. So there's a lot of tools at their disposal and a lot of evidence that we can present, even when there's no direct contract with those events, to show how they work. But that's the two things that make it tough. One, the events itself, you have to prove that it requires participation of internationally recognized athletes. And then second, you have to prove that your athlete will actually more likely than not be competing in those events. So I have made a couple things available on my screen that I'm going to share now to kind of go through this and show you what we're dealing with. So let's share the screen. All right, so here, this is from a RFE, request for evidence, that came to us from a motorsports athlete that does cycling. And the biggest problem that they had in this RFE was the events. Did they require a recognized level of competition? Right. So here at the end of this RFE, they tell you what type of evidence is useful for showing that the events are important. Published materials and documentation about the league demonstrating the extent of media coverage. So, what we do is we always try to start at the major media outlets in sports, ESPN, Sports Illustrated, things like that. Actually, Forbes is helpful. And we like to show their broadcast agreements, how long those agreements are in place, prize money, and we can go down here, revenue data of the league, viewership, attendance data, both virtual and on site, the ranking of the athletes that are competing, giving examples of people that have won that league to see how much coverage they got, and then also showing the structure of the league. So there's certain sports out there where you have a major league, then a minor league under that, semi-pro, all that type of thing. So showing where that particular league stands in the world structure of things helps too, as long as at the upper tier of minor and the major league in that particular sport. So in this particular one, I'm going to show you kind of our request for evidence that we helped out here and we're able to get the approval. But so the first thing we dealt with is that there's certain sports where anybody can sign up. Anybody can sign up to run the Boston Marathon. Anybody can technically sign up to do a lot of swimming and track racing, as long as they pay the registration fee. But there's only a certain amount, only the top tier actually make it to winning anything. There's thousands of people that run in the Boston Marathon. By the time, they run their 26 miles, there's about 100 people that have a shot at getting that first spot. And so that's what we had to show in this one. The next thing, we went through all the eligibility requirements. They said published material about the league and that. And so here, look, we have ESPN, Yahoo, and industry-specific publications. List them. Provide the exhibits of those in the back. Requirements to qualify. Here, we took the rules to explain how the top drivers get picked. And also we try to explain why the petitioner needs top drivers. So say, even if everybody can sign up, not everybody can get sponsorships. The sponsorships go to the athletes that perform the best. A lot of times sponsorships bring in more money than the prize. So of course, the internationally recognized athletes are needed to get those top tier placements to bring in top tier sponsorship money. And then here we address international rankings of other athletes competing. So we went and showed that the winners or the top placement drivers over the couple of years came from all over the world. Oh, we also showed that, here's another argument we use, especially in combat sports, is to say, okay, look at the ranking of this. If you go and look at the rankings of the top 200 in the world, they come from all over the place. So therefore, American athletes can't improve their own skill set in rankings unless they get exposure to these other athletes that come from around the world, which is something that's very helpful, and kind of a reverse argument to say, like, no, these American fighters need to compete against these guys in order to get respect around the world. Here we go through viewership and attendance data. And finally, prize money, sponsorship considerations. That's where we're talking about like how much sponsorships the league and the athlete can get. All right, let's go to another example of an RFE in combat sports. And this is where we're dealing with that second question. Is the athlete going to actually compete in these events? So for our combat sports athletes, it's not uncommon for us to say this athlete will be competing in the UFC, Bellator, Professional Fighters League, various grappling tournaments, and striking tournaments. And then we'll list dates out where they're likely to occur. And oftentimes now, half of the time, we'll get an RFE saying like, okay, you haven't met your evidential requirement because we don't see them listed on the website somewhere. So this is happening so much that we're pursuing this two ways. One is we have a federal litigation that's getting ready to drop on a pretty clean case that only deals with this issue. We've already appealed this directly to USCIS and won in another case, but there's stubborn folks, or maybe there's some new people here that don't know their own rules. That's what we do here. We teach them their own rules. So our firm has this distinct advantage of having a lot of market share in combat sports. So what I did was notice that this document is 143 pages long. And what it has is about 20 letters from some of the most powerful people in combat sports all over the world that just explain these 6 things. That is industry standard for fighters to get their own visas. And it's usually in most standard combat sports contract. It is industry standard for athletes to use a projected schedule. That means nobody knows where they're going to fight 2 years from now. Promoters don't even know what dates they're going to be on TV. They base that off of what they've already done. So when we're proving our events are going to happen over 3 years, we'll show a history of the promoter, like Top Rank has put on hundreds of events since 1964. And they have a broadcast agreement with ESPN for the next 5 years. So it's like USCIS, they'll be continuing to put on fights for the next 5 years. They've already been doing it for 70. And sometimes they'll come back to us and say like, hey, well, this is not listed on a website projections. Like, you can't know when somebody's going to fight a year from now. So I went and got letters from 20 people. Like, look, we go through it. And then I put in background information to show, who these people are. And they all prove these points. And the other points we'll show is, let's see. In general, fighters that are ranked within the 650th in the world and have proper work authorization are always highly coveted. Meaning, if you're a fighter and you're ranked, 400 and you have a P1 visa, somebody's going to employ you to fight against domestic fighters. Especially in boxing, they don't just carry a huge roster of, international fighters. They might have 30 fighters under promotional contracts, and they bring in other fighters to fight them. So the fighters that are ranked in the top 400 or 650 that have a P1 visa are going to get an opportunity, more likely than not. And so we had them write letters saying that's indeed the fact. And next, finally, in 6, we had an RFE that asked, why are their dates so close to each other on the same day? Well, we're saying if an agent is directing and navigating the career of an athlete, they have to have something to negotiate against. If you only have one opportunity, what are they directing and navigating? You have to have multiple opportunities to choose which one is the best at the best date. And then there's just like common sense that I don't understand why they don't understand, that fighters get hurt. You can't, people win and lose, the ranking goes up and down. I don't know any sport where your opponent over the next 3 years. Even the NFL schedule for 2022, and today is April, is not out. We don't know who they're going to play. Well, we know who they're going to play, but we don't know the dates and when. We just base it off of what they're going to do last year and the natural way that the schedules progress. All right, so sometimes you have to go through a lot of lengths to prove that they'll be competing in events, but we can use templates. You build templates of evidence so that you can always use that in all of your petitions and get some consistency. And then when they get it wrong, you can smack them with a lawsuit, showing that we've done this dozens of times. You need to educate your adjudicating officer how to do a good job. And we include this too, to show that combat sports athletes are independent contractors and that the agents direct them where to compete at the moment in time that works best for them. And we're actually giving contract examples where we show that fighters in the biggest leagues in the world are required to get their own visas. All right, and here we have another example of where they're talking about the reputation of the competition. And this particular one, this is a renewal. It used to be the case in renewals that as long as you prove that they're going to be doing the same thing, you don't have to provide evidence, but they changed that. So we had to go and kind of show what's going on here. All right. So here we went and we did a event by event breakdown on what the athlete will be doing. Because in sports like rodeo, barrel racing, roping, paint horse, stuff like that, reining is the one you should do with the paint horse. You go to different organizations and different stops on tours. So you have to kind of show for each tour why it's so important. So here we have about the Women's Professional Rodeo Association. We have things about their event structure. Their payout was $5.2 million 2012. Now it's much more. And then the National Barrel Horse Racing Association. And so we kind of just like go through that to show, and here's the evidence that we include with that to show the prestige of the events. And I'll unshare the screen now. But this is why there are limitations on the P1 and some disadvantages, because this is real hard immigration legal work to always be consistent and always push the envelope and always provide more evidence on these event requirement. And it's the one area where it's led us to litigation, just because there's not another avenue to get consistent adjudications. But this is one big reason why, if you're eligible for the O1, you're often better just doing that, because it doesn't come with this requirement to show that you're going to participate in events that require internationally recognized athletes, which could be a huge fight. So even if you're ranked the highest in the world and stuff like that, if you have an officer that doesn't understand this part of the petition well, you can get a denial, and it just leads into a lot of mess to fix. But hopefully, like I said, the litigation we're going to get into will lead to some more consistent results. But until then and after then, we're always going to push the envelope with better explaining and getting more consistent results on this part of the petition. So pay attention to it well, and always watch our channel for updates as we continue.